a hopeless romantic grandma, an ultra-controlled grandson, and a detective who's great at everything except being invisible. Sounds like a recipe for disaster. It absolutely is. She walks into his routine thinking she's in charge, until she realizes this CEO has a special talent, turning embarrassment into power. And when he decides to fix his grandma's problem, she learns the word pretend can be a trap. Courtney O'Neill had exactly 3 rules for running a successful private investigation business. Never get personally involved, always get paid up front, and for the love of all things holy, invest in better disguises than a baseball cap and oversized sunglasses. She was currently breaking rule number 3. Crouched behind a concrete pillar in the underground parking garage of O'Connell Aviation's corporate headquarters, Courtney adjusted her ridiculously conspicuous sunglasses and checked her camera for the 100th time. The lens cap was still on. Of course it was. "Smooth, Court, real smooth," she muttered, yanking it off and nearly dropping the entire camera in the process. It tumbled through her fingers like a bar of wet soap before she caught it against her chest with an audible thump. "Okay, totally professional, this is fine." It was not fine. She'd been tailing Gregory O'Connell for 6 days now, and her investigation had yielded exactly 0 romantic prospects. The man's life was a monument to monotony. Office at 7 in the morning, meetings until noon, working lunch at his desk, more meetings, gym at 6, home by 8, rinse, repeat, die alone. Courtney felt a pang of sympathy for his grandmother, the elegant Mrs. Eleanor O'Connell, who'd hired her last Tuesday with trembling hands and worried eyes that had seen too many years pass without great-grandchildren. "He's 38, Eleanor had said, sitting across from Courtney's cluttered desk in her modest downtown office. Brilliant, accomplished, completely devoted to that company, and utterly, devastatingly alone. She dabbed at her eyes with an embroidered handkerchief. "I just want to know if there's someone, anyone, If this story is touching your heart, show your support. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Every action helps us keep bringing you new stories full of emotion." She hadn't finished the sentence. She hadn't needed to. So here Courtney was, playing Nancy Drew in the world's worst disguise, waiting for a man who apparently had the romantic life of a park bench. The elevator dinged. Courtney's pulse quickened. She raised her camera, finger hovering over the shutter button. Through the viewfinder, she watched Gregory O'Connell emerge into the parking garage, and even through the lens, the man was ridiculously intimidating. Tall, easily 6'3", with dark hair that probably cost more to cut than her monthly rent, wearing a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been constructed on his body by tiny, perfectionist tailors. His jaw could cut glass. His expression could freeze lava. He walked with the kind of confidence that came from always being the most powerful person in any room, phone pressed to his ear, probably closing a deal worth more than her entire net worth. "Just get it done, Marcus," he said into the phone, his voice deep and controlled. "I don't pay you to give me problems, I pay you to solve them." Courtney snapped 3 photos in rapid succession. Click, click, click. Gregory stopped walking. Courtney's blood turned to ice. He turned his head slightly, as if listening for something. Then he lowered the phone and looked directly at the pillar she was hiding behind. "Oh no," Courtney whispered. "Oh no, 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 no. How long have you been following me?" The voice came from directly beside her. Courtney shrieked, an embarrassing high-pitched sound that echoed through the parking garage like a car alarm. She spun around so fast she dropped her camera. It clattered to the concrete with a noise that made her wince. Gregory O'Connell stood less than 2 feet away, arms crossed, head tilted in an expression that managed to convey both irritation and curiosity. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. Those eyes, ice blue and sharp as surgical steel, pinned her in place like a butterfly to a board. The crisp scent of his cologne, something expensive and woodsy, made her brain short-circuit. How did you—" Courtney's mouth moved, but coherent words refused to form. 6 days, he said calmly, uncrossing his arms. "You've been following me for 6 days. Terrible hat, by the way, and the sunglasses. Indoors? Might as well carry a sign that says, 'Suspicious person.'" Heat flooded Courtney's face. This is a public parking garage." He raised one dark eyebrow. "Employee parking garage, which makes this trespassing." He bent down and picked up her camera. examining it with the kind of detached interest someone might show a particularly unremarkable rock. And this makes it stalking. Courtney's mind raced through her options. Run, he had longer legs. Lie, he clearly already knew. Or the truth, your grandmother hired me. The words burst out of her like a confession at gunpoint. Gregory's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those cold eyes. Excuse me? Mrs. Eleanor O'Connell. She came to my office last week. She's worried about you. Courtney knew she was babbling but couldn't stop. She thinks you're married to your work and you'll never fall in love, and she'll never get great-grandchildren, and she hired me to find out if you were secretly dating someone because you never talk about your personal life and... Stop. One word. Quiet, but absolute. Courtney's mouth snapped shut. Gregory pinched the bridge of his nose, a gesture that somehow made him look both more human and more exhausted. When he looked at her again, something had shifted in his expression. It wasn't quite amusement, but it was close. Let me get this straight, he said slowly. My grandmother, my romance novel-obsessed, meddling, absolutely impossible grandmother, hired a private investigator to spy on me because she's worried I'm not dating anyone. Basically, yes. Courtney's voice came out small. And you took the case. She seemed really worried, and she paid up front. Of course she did. He handed her camera back with exaggerated care. Here, evidence of my thrilling life, meetings, gym, sleep, repeat. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and Courtney felt an entirely inappropriate jolt of electricity. She jerked the camera back like it had burned her. Gregory noticed. Of course he noticed. A small smile, no, not a smile, more like a smile's distant cousin, played at the corner of his mouth. You're terrible at this, you know, he said. Hey! Indignation finally overcame her fear. I run a very successful business. Do you? His tone was polite skepticism incarnate. What's your success rate on these surveillance jobs? Courtney opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. That's not relevant. He studied her for a long moment, and Courtney suddenly became aware of how ridiculous she must look. 5'2" on a good day, drowning in an oversized jacket, with her red hair escaping from under her cap in chaotic curls. What's your name? He asked. Courtney O'Neill. Well, Courtney O'Neill. Gregory's voice dropped lower, and despite the warm parking garage, she shivered. You're going to do something for me. I don't think you're going to be my girlfriend. Courtney blinked. I'm sorry, what? My girlfriend, my significant other, my romantic partner. He said it like he was explaining a simple business transaction. You'll attend family dinners, company events, whatever my grandmother needs to see to believe I'm in a relationship. That's insane. The alternative, Gregory continued as if she hadn't spoken, is I call my lawyers and have you charged with harassment, trespassing, and illegal surveillance. Your little detective agency, gone. Your reputation, destroyed. Your bank account, empty after you pay my legal fees. Courtney's heart hammered against her ribs. You wouldn't. I absolutely would. His expression was pleasant, almost friendly, which somehow made the threat more terrifying. I don't like being manipulated. I especially don't like being spied on. But I do love my grandmother, and if this is what it takes to make her happy... He shrugged. You created this problem. You're going to help me solve it. This is blackmail. This is an arrangement. He pulled out his phone and typed something. I'm texting you my address. Dinner at my grandmother's house is tomorrow at 7. Wear something. His gaze traveled over her wrinkled jacket and coffee-stained jeans. Different. Considerably different. Courtney's phone buzzed in her pocket. She was too stunned to check it. Gregory O'Connell turned to walk away, then paused and looked back over his shoulder. Oh, and Courtney. What? She whispered. That almost smile appeared again, and this time it reached his eyes, turning them from ice to something far more dangerous. Try not to trip on the way out. It would ruin your mysterious detective mystique. Then he was gone, disappearing into the elevator, with the quiet confidence of a man who'd just won a negotiation without breaking a sweat. Courtney stood alone in the parking garage, camera clutched to her chest, mind reeling. She'd come here to investigate a man's love life. She'd left being blackmailed into becoming his fake girlfriend. Well, she said to the empty space, this is definitely not in the PI handbook. Her phone buzzed again. A second text from an unknown number. Don't be late. I despise tardiness. Courtney looked down at her outfit. The same jeans she'd worn for 3 days, the jacket with the mystery stain, the sneakers held together with hope and duct tape. I am so screwed, she said. And somewhere in an office 30 floors above, Gregory O'Connell sat at his desk, stared at nothing in particular, and wondered why his heart was beating just a little bit faster than normal. It was just an arrangement, he told himself. Just business. Nothing more. The lie tasted bitter even in his own mind. You're telling me, Sloane Mitchell said, setting down her wineglass with deliberate precision, that you got caught stalking a billionaire CEO, and instead of calling the police, he blackmailed you into being his fake girlfriend? Courtney nodded miserably from her position face down on Sloane's leather couch. Yep. And you said yes? What was I supposed to do? He threatened to destroy my business. Sloane, who'd been Courtney's best friend since law school, well, since Courtney dropped out of law school to become a PI, picked up her wine again and took a long sip. Court, honey, I say this with love. You have the survival instincts of a lemming. That's not helpful. It's accurate. Sloane crossed her legs, her power suit somehow still immaculate, despite it being 8 o'clock at night. Did you at least get the terms in writing? Courtney lifted her head. In writing? Contract? Agreement? Email? Literally anything that protects you legally? He texted me his address? Sloane closed her eyes and took a deep breath, clearly praying for patience. You're going to give me an aneurysm. Do you know how many laws he's probably breaking? Coercion, intimidation, possibly extortion? He's not breaking any laws, Courtney interrupted. I was the one trespassing and stalking him, remember? With his grandmother's permission, which I can't prove without throwing a sweet old lady under the bus. Courtney sat up, running her hands through her disaster of hair. Sloane, I'm screwed. I have to have dinner with his grandmother tomorrow, and I don't even know what to wear. He said to wear something different. I think he meant something that doesn't look like I got dressed in the dark. Sloane's expression softened slightly. What time's the dinner? 7. What time are you picking me up tomorrow? Courtney blinked. What? We're going shopping. Sloane stood, already pulling out her phone. If you're going to be fake dating a CEO, you need to at least look like you belong in the same tax bracket. I'm thinking something elegant but approachable. Nothing too flashy. You're supposed to be genuine, not a trophy. Sloane, and we're doing something about your hair. What's wrong with my hair? Currently, everything. Tomorrow? Sloane smiled, and it was almost predatory. It's going to be gorgeous. Now go home and get some sleep. We have a lot of work to do. But 24 hours later, Courtney stood on the doorstep of Eleanor O'Connell's brownstone in Beacon Hill, wearing a dress that cost more than her monthly rent, shoes that were actively trying to murder her, and a panic attack that was reaching critical mass. I can't do this, she whispered. You can and you will, Sloane had said that afternoon after 5 hours of shopping torture. Just be yourself. Well, yourself, but with better posture and less rambling. The dress was beautiful, a soft coral color that Sloane insisted brought out her eyes, with a fitted bodice and a skirt that swirled when she walked. Her hair had been tamed into soft waves, and Sloane had even done her makeup, threatening bodily harm if Courtney rubbed her eyes before the dinner ended. The front door opened before she could knock. Gregory O'Connell stood in the doorway, and Courtney forgot how to breathe. He'd traded his business suit for dark slacks and a white button-down, with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms that had no business being that attractive. His hair was slightly less perfect than usual, like he'd run his fingers through it recently. He looked softer, more human. Then his gaze traveled down her dress and back up to her face, and something shifted in his expression. His eyes widened just a fraction, barely noticeable unless you were staring at him, which Courtney definitely was, and his jaw tightened. Courtney, he said, and his voice came out rougher than usual. Hi, she squeaked. I'm not late, am I? No, you're... He cleared his throat. Right on time. They stood there for a moment, and Courtney became hyper-aware of how his eyes kept returning to her face, her hair, the dress. It wasn't creepy or objectifying. It was something else entirely, something that made her skin flush warm. You look different, he finally said. You said to wear something different. I did. A pause. It's effective. Before Courtney could process that cryptic comment, a voice called from inside. Gregory, is that her? Don't leave the poor girl on the doorstep." Gregory stepped aside and Courtney entered the most beautiful home she'd ever seen. Dark wood floors, crown molding, oil paintings that were probably worth more than her car. Everything was elegant and warm and utterly terrifying. "Grandmother," Gregory said, placing his hand on the small of Courtney's back, a touch that sent electricity up her spine and guiding her into the dining room. "This is Courtney. Courtney, my grandmother, Eleanor O'Connell." Eleanor turned from the table she'd been setting, and Courtney's heart clenched. She looked exactly as she had in the office, elegant, silver-haired, with kind eyes that currently sparkled with hope. "Oh, my dear," Eleanor breathed, clasping her hands together. "Gregory didn't tell me you were so lovely." "Thank you, Mrs. O'Connell," Courtney said, then winced. "I mean, it's wonderful to meet you, officially, for the first time, because we've never met before." Gregory's hand pressed slightly firmer against her back, probably a warning to stop talking. Eleanor smiled warmly. "Please, call me Eleanor, or—" She hesitated, looking almost shy. "Or Grandma Eleanor, if you'd like." "Oh," Courtney felt her eyes sting. Yes, that would be, She'd love that," Gregory interjected smoothly. They moved toward the dining room, and Courtney, distracted by the overwhelming elegance and her spiraling anxiety, completely missed the first step. Her ankle twisted. The world tilted. She felt herself falling forward, arms windmilling uselessly. Strong hands caught her around the waist, steadying her before she could faceplant into Eleanor's antique rug. Gregory's chest was solid against her back, his breath warm on her neck. "Careful," he murmured, and there was something in his voice, amusement, concern, that made her shiver. "Sorry," Courtney gasped. "These shoes are— I'm not usually this—" "Graceful?" Gregory suggested, and she could hear the smile in his voice. She turned to glare at him, still in his arms, and found his face closer than expected. Those blue eyes held hers, and for a moment the world reduced to just the two of them. His hands on her waist, her hands clutched at his forearms. The space between them charged with something she couldn't name. "I was going to say nervous," she whispered. "You have nothing to be nervous about," he said, just as quiet. "Your grandmother is watching us." "I know." But he didn't let go immediately. His thumbs pressed slightly against her sides, a touch that felt far more intimate than it should. Eleanor's delighted laugh broke the spell. "Oh, you two are adorable. Come sit, dinner's ready." Gregory released her slowly, as if reluctant, and Courtney told herself that the loss of his touch didn't feel like disappointment. It was just an act. They were pretending. Dinner started beautifully. Eleanor had prepared a feast: roasted chicken, garlic potatoes, green beans that actually looked appealing. Courtney managed to sit without incident, though Gregory pulled out her chair with exaggerated gentleness that made her want to kick him. "So, Courtney dear," Eleanor said, pouring wine. "Gregory tells me you're a private investigator. How fascinating. How did you two meet?" Courtney's mind went blank. They hadn't prepared a story. Why hadn't they prepared a story? Coffee shop," Gregory said smoothly. "She was reading a mystery novel. I made a comment about the author. She disagreed vehemently." Eleanor beamed. "A meet-cute overbooks. How romantic." "It wasn't romantic," Courtney said automatically. He was kind of arrogant about the whole thing. "I was right about the plot twist," Gregory interjected. "You were pretentious about the plot twist. Is there a difference?" Despite herself, Courtney smiled. Eleanor looked delighted. The dinner continued with easier conversation. Eleanor asked about Courtney's work, her family, her interests. Courtney found herself relaxing, almost forgetting this was fake, until she reached for her wine glass and knocked it directly into her plate. Red wine flooded across the white tablecloth, soaking into the embroidered edges that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. "Oh, God!" Courtney gasped, jumping up. "I'm so sorry, I can pay for—" "Don't worry, sweetheart," Eleanor said. But Courtney was already grabbing napkins, dabbing frantically at the stain, making it worse. "I'm such a disaster," she muttered. "I can't believe I—" "Courtney." Gregory's hand covered hers, stopping her frantic dabbing. "It's fine. It's just a tablecloth. It's probably a priceless antique. It's from Williams-Sonoma," Eleanor said cheerfully. "I have 3 more. Accidents happen, dear. Please, sit." Courtney sat, face burning, wanting the earth to swallow her whole. Under the table, Gregory's knee pressed against hers. Whether by accident or design, she wasn't sure, but he left it there, a warm, solid presence that somehow made everything slightly less mortifying. "I think she's perfect for you," Eleanor said to Gregory, eyes twinkling. Gregory looked at Courtney, really looked at her with her flushed cheeks and wine-stained napkin and mortified expression, and something genuine flickered across his face. "Yes," he said quietly, "she is." And for the first time since this ridiculous arrangement started, Courtney wondered if maybe, possibly, they were both better liars than they thought. Or maybe, and this was more terrifying, they weren't lying at all. "You're moving in together?" Sloane's voice climbed 3 octaves. "Court, you've known this man for 2 weeks." Courtney pressed the phone between her shoulder and ear while trying to fold a sweater. "It's not like that. It's just, his grandmother suggested it, and he agreed before I could say anything. And now she thinks we're madly in love and taking the next natural step. The next natural step is usually more than one date that ended in property damage." "It was 1 tablecloth. You're impossible," Sloane sighed heavily. "When's the move?" "Tomorrow. He's sending movers." "Of course he is, because normal people pack their own boxes like peasants." Courtney looked around her tiny apartment, more accurately her disaster zone. Plants overflowing from every surface, throw pillows in chaotic piles, books stacked in towers that defied physics. Her entire life looked like a Pinterest board had a nervous breakdown. "Sloane, what if he hates all my stuff? Then he's not worth your time." A pause. "But also, maybe don't bring the cactus you named Fernando. That thing is an abomination. Fernando has character. Fernando has 3 surviving needles and a death wish." The next morning, Courtney stood in the lobby of Gregory's building, a sleek glass tower in the city's most expensive district, surrounded by boxes labeled in her handwriting, "Kitchen chaos, bedroom maybe," and "miscellaneous life choices." The doorman, a distinguished man named James, who looked like he'd never seen chaos in his life, eyed her collection with barely concealed horror. "Mr. O'Connell is expecting you, Miss O'Neill. Penthouse level." The elevator ride felt endless. Courtney watched the numbers climb, 20, 30, 40, her stomach dropping with each floor. When the doors opened directly into Gregory's penthouse, she forgot how to breathe. The space was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture in blacks and greys, everything sharp angles and clean lines, not a single thing out of place. It looked like a museum, beautiful, cold, and utterly soulless. "What do you think?" Courtney jumped. Gregory emerged from what must be the kitchen, wearing jeans and a navy Henley that should be illegal. Casual looked unfairly good on him. "It's very..." She searched for a diplomatic word. "Minimalist." "You hate it." "I didn't say that. Your face said it." He crossed his arms, leaning against the doorframe. "Too modern. Too clean," Courtney admitted. "Do you actually live here, or do you just stand in corners looking brooding and successful?" His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "I've been told I excel at brooding." It's the jawline, very broodable. This time he did smile, and Courtney's heart did something complicated. "The guest room is down the hall, second door on the right. Unless..." He hesitated, something uncertain crossing his expression. "My grandmother will expect us to share a room eventually." "Eventually," Courtney agreed quickly, "but not today. Baby steps." "Right. Baby steps." He looked almost relieved. The movers arrived, and Courtney's chaos invaded Gregory's pristine space like a cheerful plague. She tried to be respectful, she really did. But within 2 hours her plants claimed the windowsills, her colourful throw pillows ambushed the grey couch, and her books formed small cities on every flat surface. Gregory watched from the kitchen, expression unreadable. "I can put everything in my room," Courtney offered nervously. "I know it's a lot." "No," his voice was quiet. It's good. The place needed colour." "Really?" He gestured to a trailing pothos she'd hung near the window. "That one." "What's its name?" "You think I name my plants?" "I know you name your plants." Courtney bit her lip. "Gerald." "Of course it is." Gregory picked up a turquoise pillow with tassels, examining it like an alien artifact. "And this?" "That's just a pillow. Not everything has a name." "Somehow I don't believe you." They fell into an unexpected rhythm. Gregory made coffee, perfect, pretentious coffee from a machine that probably cost more than her car. Courtney made pancakes, lumpy, slightly burnt but edible. He organized her books by genre. She horrified him by arranging his precisely folded kitchen towels by color instead of size. "You're doing that to torture me," he said, watching her swap a gray towel for a blue one. "I'm doing this because it looks better. It looks like a rainbow had a mild crisis." "You're welcome." She grinned at him over her shoulder. Gregory stared at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Then he turned away abruptly. "I have work calls this afternoon. Try not to reorganize my entire life while I'm gone." "No promises." That night, Courtney lay in the guest room, a space larger than her entire former apartment, and listened to the city sounds filtering through the windows. Down the hall she could hear Gregory moving around in his room. Water running. Footsteps. The quiet sounds of another person existing in the same space. It should have felt awkward, intrusive. Instead, it felt almost right. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sloan. "How's domestic bliss?" Courtney typed back. "He has 17 types of coffee beans." "Who needs 17 types? Rich people. Avoid falling for him." "I'm not falling for him." "You're a terrible liar." Courtney stared at the message, then set her phone down without responding. Because Sloan was right. She was a terrible liar. And somewhere between the tablecloth incident and the coffee beans, something had shifted. Gregory looked at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve but desperately wanted to. His rare smiles felt like victories. And when he'd steadied her on the stairs at Eleanor's house, his hands warm on her waist, she'd wanted nothing more than to turn around and— "Stop it," Courtney whispered to herself. "This is fake. It's an arrangement. He's blackmailing you into this." But blackmail didn't explain why he'd smiled at her chaos, why he'd said the apartment needed color, why his voice went softer when he said her name. Down the hall, Gregory sat on the edge of his bed, staring at nothing. The apartment felt different, alive, like something dormant had woken up, like he'd woken up. He'd spent 10 years building walls, burying himself in work, convincing himself that control was the same as contentment. And then a 5'2" disaster of a woman had stumbled into his parking garage, and every carefully constructed defense had started cracking. The way she'd looked in that coral dress, the way she'd tried to clean up the wine spill, mortified and genuine, the way she'd named her plants and argued about towel arrangements and made his sterile apartment feel like a home. Gregory ran his hands through his hair, frustrated with himself. This was supposed to be simple, an arrangement to satisfy his grandmother's romantic delusions. Nothing more. So why did the thought of Courtney sleeping down the hall make his chest tight? Why had he wanted to follow her into that guest room and ask her to stay? Why did baby steps feel like the worst idea he'd ever agreed to? "Get it together," he told himself. "It's just proximity, just an attractive woman in your space, nothing more." But when he finally fell asleep, he dreamed of red hair and grey-green eyes and a laugh that sounded like coming home. And for the first time in years, Gregory O'Connell admitted to himself that he might be in serious trouble. Living with Gregory O'Connell was like cohabiting with a very attractive, very particular robot who happened to have opinions about everything. "You put the mugs in the wrong cabinet," he said on day 3, watching Courtney make morning coffee. "There's a right cabinet for mugs. The one closest to the coffee maker. It's logical." "What's logical is putting them where I can reach them without a stepladder." Gregory's lips twitched. He reached over her head, deliberately invading her space, she was certain, and retrieved the mug she'd been stretching for. His chest brushed her back, and Courtney's breath caught. "You're what, 5'2"? His voice was close to her ear, amused. 5'5", she lied, turning to glare at him. They were inches apart. His blue eyes held hers, a challenge dancing in them. "You're 5'2", maybe 5'3" in those ridiculous fuzzy socks. They're comfortable. They're neon pink with googly eyes. Your point? I don't have one." He smiled, a real, full smile that transformed his entire face. "I actually think they're perfect." Then he was gone, grabbing his briefcase and heading for the door, leaving Courtney standing in the kitchen with a racing heart and a mug she'd forgotten she needed. "I hate him," she told Gerald the Pothos. Gerald predictably said nothing. By day 5, they'd established a routine. Gregory left at 6:30, returned at 6:30. Courtney worked from home, taking surveillance photos and running background checks while surrounded by her plant children. They cooked dinner together, or rather he cooked while she provided commentary, and occasionally didn't burn things. "You're chopping that onion wrong," Gregory said, not looking up from the chicken he was seasoning. "There's a wrong way to chop an onion." "Apparently, yes, based on what you're doing." Courtney threw a piece of onion at him. It bounced off his shoulder. Gregory turned slowly, eyebrow raised. "Did you just—" "Maybe." He set down his knife with deliberate precision. "You're aware I could have you evicted. You're aware your grandmother thinks we're in love?" "Touché." He picked up the onion piece and popped it in his mouth. "Though for the record, if we were actually dating, food throwing would not be tolerated. Good thing we're not actually dating then." Courtney returned to her massacre of the onion, ignoring how her stomach dropped at her own words. That night, they watched a documentary Gregory insisted was essential viewing about aviation innovation. Courtney lasted 15 minutes before her head drooped onto his shoulder. Gregory froze. Courtney's soft breathing was warm against his neck, her hair tickling his jaw. He should wake her, send her to bed, maintain appropriate boundaries. Instead, he carefully shifted so she'd be more comfortable, her head settling against his chest. She mumbled something unintelligible and curled closer. Gregory stared at the ceiling, hyper-aware of every point of contact. The weight of her against him, the vanilla and wildflower scent of her shampoo. The absolute rightness of this moment that should feel wrong. His hand moved of its own accord, fingers threading gently through her hair. So soft, like silk. She sighed in her sleep, and his heart clenched. "What are you doing to me?" he whispered to the sleeping woman who'd invaded his home and his life, and apparently every thought he had. He carried her to bed eventually. She barely stirred, just mumbled 17 coffee beans and burrowed into his arms, and tucked her in, like something precious. In the doorway, he paused. Watching her sleep felt like crossing a line, but he couldn't seem to help it. Courtney looked younger like this, vulnerable. The woman who'd faced his blackmail with defiant courage and wine-stained table linens. "I'm in trouble," Gregory admitted to the darkness. Then he went to his own room, lay awake for 2 hours, and tried to remember why this was supposed to be fake. The weekend brought their first real test, a company charity gala. "I can't go to this," Courtney said, staring at the invitation. "It says black tie. I don't own anything black tie." "Already handled." Gregory gestured to a garment bag hanging in her room. "My assistant picked something up." "Your assistant bought me a dress?" "Marcus has excellent taste. Trust me." The dress was midnight blue. Sapphire, really, with a fitted bodice and a skirt that moved like water. Courtney stared at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the elegant woman staring back. When she emerged, Gregory went completely still. He'd been adjusting his bow tie in the hallway mirror, looking unfairly devastating in his tuxedo. But when he saw her, his hands froze mid-movement, and something raw and unguarded flickered across his face. "You look—" He stopped, cleared his throat. "That color is perfect. Your assistant has good taste. Apparently exceptional taste." His gaze traveled over her again, slower this time, and Courtney felt heat bloom across her skin. "We should go. Car's waiting." In the elevator, Courtney fussed with her clutch. "What if I embarrass you? What if I say something stupid or trip or—" "Courtney!" Gregory's hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "Breathe." She looked at their joined hands. "This is just for show, right? For when people are watching?" Gregory's jaw tightened. Right, just for show. But he didn't let go. The gala was overwhelming. A sea of designer gowns and expensive suits, champagne towers, and strategic networking. Courtney stuck to Gregory's side like glue, smiling until her face hurt. "Mr. O'Connell!" A silver-haired man approached, hand extended. "Wonderful to see you. And who is this lovely young lady?" "Courtney O'Neill," Gregory said, his hand settling possessively on her lower back. "My girlfriend." The word sent electricity through her. He said it so easily, like it was true, like he wanted it to be true. "Charmed," the man said. "O'Connell, we should discuss that merger." "Not tonight, Richard." Gregory's smile was polite steel. "Tonight, I'm just here with my girl." My girl. Courtney's heart forgot how to beat properly. They made it through an hour of small talk before Gregory leaned down and whispered, "You're doing great." "I haven't spilled anything yet. The night's still young." She elbowed him. He caught her hand, held it against his side. his thumb brushing over her knuckles in slow circles that felt far too intimate for a fake relationship. "Gregory," she started. "Hmm? Why are you—" She stopped as a woman approached, tall and striking in a red gown that probably cost more than Courtney's annual salary. "Gregory," the woman said, her smile sharp and knowing. "It's been a while." And just like that, Courtney felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Because the way this woman looked at Gregory, like she knew him, really knew him, made Courtney's stomach twist with something that felt dangerously close to jealousy. "Victoria," Gregory said, his voice carefully neutral. "I didn't know you'd be here. Last-minute addition to the guest list." Victoria's smile was all teeth and confidence. "When I heard O'Connell Aviation was sponsoring, I couldn't resist." She extended her hand to Courtney like a queen greeting a peasant. "And you must be Gregory's friend?" "Girlfriend," Courtney said, shaking her hand perhaps a bit too firmly. "Courtney O'Neill." "How lovely." Victoria's gaze swept over Courtney's dress with the precision of a laser. "That's a beautiful gown. Rental." "Gift," Gregory interjected smoothly, his hand tightening on Courtney's waist. "Victoria runs Sterling Aerospace. We've done business together in the past." "Among other things," Victoria added with a laugh that made Courtney's teeth hurt. "Business? Right. Totally just business." That's why Victoria was touching Gregory's arm with casual familiarity, leaning in like they shared secrets Courtney would never be privy to. "We should catch up," Victoria said to Gregory, completely ignoring Courtney's existence. "The merger talk from Singapore, remember? We never did finish that conversation over dinner." Dinner. Of course there had been dinners, probably candle-lit ones in expensive restaurants, where everyone knew the proper fork to use. "Another time," Gregory said politely. "Tonight I'm here with Courtney." "Of course." Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Lovely meeting you, Carolyn." "Courtney," she corrected, but Victoria had already glided away in a cloud of expensive perfume and superiority. Courtney stood frozen, watching the woman disappear into the crowd. She was everything Courtney wasn't. Tall, polished, sophisticated. The kind of woman who belonged on Gregory's arm at events like this. Who probably never spilled wine or named her plants or wore fuzzy socks with googly eyes. "Hey." Gregory turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "You okay?" "Fine," Courtney lied. "She seems nice." His eyebrow arched. "You're a terrible liar." "She called me Carolyn." "She does that power play." Gregory's thumb traced her collarbone, a touch that should have been comforting, but instead lit her nerves on fire. "Ignore her." "Did you date her?" The question escaped before Courtney could stop it. Gregory's expression shuddered for a moment, then softened. Briefly. 3 years ago. It didn't work out. Why not? He studied her face, something unreadable in his eyes. "She wanted a merger. I wanted—" He paused. "Something real." Courtney's breath caught. The word real hung between them, heavy with meaning neither of them was ready to acknowledge. "Dance with me," Gregory said suddenly. "What?" "Dance with me." He was already guiding her toward the floor, where couples swayed to a string quartet. "Unless you'd rather stand here analyzing my past relationships." "I wasn't analyzing." "You were definitely analyzing." They reached the dance floor, and Gregory pulled her close. One hand settled at her waist, the other cradled her hand against his chest. Courtney's free hand landed on his shoulder, and suddenly they were moving, swaying to music she barely heard over her thundering heartbeat. "I can't really dance," she admitted. "Good thing I can lead." He pulled her closer until they were pressed together from chest to thigh. "Just follow me." Following Gregory O'Connell was becoming dangerously easy. They moved together, and Courtney forgot about Victoria. Forgot about the crowd watching, forgot that this was supposed to be fake. All she could focus on was the warmth of his hand on her waist, the solid strength of him, the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the room. "You're staring," she whispered. "You're beautiful." He said it simply, like stating a fact. "I'm allowed to stare. This is just pretend." "Is it?" His hand slid lower on her back, pulling her impossibly closer. "Because it doesn't feel pretend right now." Courtney's heart hammered against her ribs. "Gregory." "I know." His jaw tightened. "I know what this is supposed to be, but Courtney, every time I look at you, every time you argue with me about coffee beans, or throw vegetables at me, or fall asleep on my shoulder, watching boring documentaries—" "They are boring," she interrupted breathlessly. "I forget that this started as blackmail. I forget that I'm supposed to be acting." His forehead dropped to rest against hers. "Tell me you feel it too. Tell me I'm not losing my mind." She should lie, should protect herself, should remember that Gregory O'Connell was a ruthless CEO who'd threatened to destroy her career. "You're not," she whispered. "You're not losing your mind." His breath hitched. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. "What are we doing?" "I have no idea. This complicates everything." "I know." They swayed there, lost in each other, until someone bumped into Courtney from behind. She stumbled forward, her heel catching in her dress. Gregory caught her easily, steadying her against his chest. "Graceful as always," he murmured, but his voice was fond. "Shut up." She was laughing despite herself, despite the confusion and the fear and the overwhelming certainty that she was falling for someone she absolutely shouldn't fall for. Gregory smiled down at her, and it was that smile, the real one, the one that made him look younger and less guarded, that undid her completely. "We should get out of here," he said. "It's your company's event." "I don't care." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "Come on." They escaped to the balcony, the cool night air a relief after the stifling ballroom. The city stretched out below them, lights twinkling like fallen stars. "Better?" Gregory asked. "Much." Courtney leaned against the railing, trying to calm her racing thoughts. "Gregory? What are we doing? Really?" He stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I don't know. But I know I want to figure it out. Your grandmother will be thrilled when she finds out this became real." "If it becomes real," Courtney corrected, even though her heart was screaming that it already was. Gregory turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "Courtney, I need you to understand something. Victoria, she's in the past," Courtney finished. "You said that." "No, I mean..." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "There was never anything there. Not really. It was convenient, professional. Nothing like..." He stopped himself, but Courtney heard the unspoken words. "Nothing like this. Nothing like you. We should go home," she said softly. "Yeah." But neither of them moved. They stood there on the balcony, the space between them charged with everything they weren't saying, until Gregory finally broke. "One more dance," he said, "before we go." There was no music on the balcony, but Courtney stepped into his arms anyway. They swayed together under the stars, and for once neither of them was pretending. And somewhere in the ballroom, Victoria watched them through the glass doors and smiled knowingly. Some battles, she thought, were already lost before they began. This was one of them. The car ride home was silent, but it was the kind of silence that hummed with unspoken words. Gregory's hand rested on the seat between them, close enough that Courtney could feel its warmth, but not quite touching. She wanted to reach for it, wanted to close that tiny distance and see what happened. Instead, she stared out the window and tried to remember how to breathe normally. "You're thinking too loud," Gregory said. "That's not a thing. With you it is." He glanced at her, his face illuminated by passing streetlights. "What's going on in that head?" "Everything. Nothing. The way you looked at me on the balcony. The way Victoria touched your arm like she had a right to. The terrifying certainty that I'm in way over my head." "Just tired," Courtney lied. Gregory made a non-committal sound that said he knew she was lying but wouldn't push. Yet. Back at the penthouse, Courtney kicked off her heels with a groan of relief. "These are torture devices. How do people wear these willingly?" "They make your legs look incredible," Gregory said, then froze as if realizing he'd spoken aloud. Courtney turned to stare at him. "What?" "I said..." He cleared his throat. "They're impractical. That's what I said. That is definitely not what you said." His ears turned slightly pink, and Courtney bit back a smile. Gregory O'Connell flustered. She wanted to frame this moment. "I'm going to change," he announced, loosening his bow tie as he headed for his room. "Try not to reorganize my kitchen while I'm gone." "No promises," she called after him. Alone in the living room, Courtney let out a shaky breath. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark windows. A woman in an expensive dress standing in a penthouse she didn't belong in, falling for a man who'd blackmailed her into this situation. "This is insane," she told her reflection. "You realize this is insane, right?" Her reflection offered no advice. She changed into pajamas. comfortable cotton shorts and an oversized NYU sweatshirt she'd stolen from an ex-boyfriend years ago, and was contemplating raiding Gregory's pretentious cheese selection when she heard a crash from his bedroom. "Gregory?" She knocked on his door. "You okay?" "Fine," came the muffled response. "Just don't come in," which naturally made Courtney immediately open the door. Gregory stood in the middle of his room, one shoe on, one shoe off, his dress shirt half unbuttoned and somehow tangled around one arm. His bow tie dangled from his neck like a sad accessory, and his hair stuck up at angles from where he'd clearly been running frustrated hands through it. He looked utterly, completely ridiculous. "Don't," he warned, seeing her face. "Don't what?" Courtney pressed her lips together, trying not to laugh. "Don't laugh." "I'm not laughing." "You're about to." "I'm really, truly not." The giggle escaped despite her best efforts. Then another. Then she was full-on laughing, clutching the doorframe for support, while Gregory glared at her with as much dignity as a man tangled in his own shirt could muster. "It's not funny," he said. "It's extremely funny." Courtney crossed the room, still giggling. "How did you even manage this?" "The button caught on the cufflink, and then I tried to stop laughing." "I can't." She reached up to help him, fingers working at the tangled fabric. "You look like you lost a fight with your wardrobe." "I did lose a fight with my wardrobe." His voice was grumpy, but she could hear the smile in it. "And you're not helping." "I literally am helping." She freed one arm, then the other, then tugged the shirt off completely, which left Gregory standing in front of her in just his undershirt and dress pants, and suddenly, Courtney's laughter died in her throat. Because Gregory O'Connell, without the armor of his expensive suits, was unfairly, devastatingly attractive. The undershirt clung to muscles she'd felt but never seen. His chest rose and fell with each breath, and Courtney realized her hands were still resting on his shoulders. "Thanks," Gregory said quietly, not moving away. "You're welcome," she whispered back. They stood there, frozen in the space between friends and something more, while the city hummed outside the windows. Gregory's hands came up slowly, settling on her waist, with a gentleness that made her ache. "Courtney," he started. Her phone buzzed aggressively from the living room. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. The spell broke. Courtney stepped back, cheeks flaming. That's probably Sloane. She tends to panic if I don't check in after events." "Right, of course." Gregory's hands fell to his sides, and he looked as off balance as she felt. "Go. Answer your phone." Courtney fled, grabbing her phone to find 7 texts from Sloane, all variations of "Are you alive and did the rich boy murder you?" She typed back, "Still alive. Gala was fine. Going to bed." "Did anything happen?" Courtney looked toward Gregory's bedroom, where she could hear him moving around, probably finishing getting changed. "No," she lied. "Nothing happened. She went to bed in the guest room, but sleep was impossible." Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Gregory tangled in his shirt, looking adorably human, or Gregory on the balcony, forehead pressed to hers, admitting this felt real, or Gregory's hands on her waist in his bedroom, his eyes dark with something she was terrified to name. Down the hall, Gregory wasn't sleeping either. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment Courtney had helped him with his shirt, the way she'd laughed bright and genuine, the way her hands had felt on his shoulders, the way he'd wanted to pull her close and kiss her until neither of them could remember why they were supposed to be pretending. He'd nearly done it, nearly closed that final distance and taken the leap. But Courtney deserved better than a kiss born from desperation and confusion. She deserved clarity, honesty, a choice made without the weight of his blackmail hanging over them. Gregory grabbed his phone, opening a new note. "Reasons this is a terrible idea. 1. Started with blackmail. 2. She could sue me. 3. Grandmother will be insufferable if she's right. 4. I'm her landlord. 5. She makes me feel things I haven't felt in years and it's terrifying." He stared at number 5 for a long moment, then deleted the whole list. "You're an idiot," he told himself. "She's chaos and plants and fuzzy socks, and you're falling for her like a complete idiot." His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, his assistant. "How was the gala?" Gregory typed back, "Complicated. Good complicated or bad complicated?" "Both." "That's cryptic. Get some sleep, boss." But sleep didn't come. Instead, Gregory lay awake and wondered when exactly Courtney O'Neill had stopped being an arrangement and started being everything. Courtney woke to the smell of coffee and something burning. She stumbled into the kitchen to find Gregory standing over the stove, staring at a pan of what might have once been eggs with an expression of profound betrayal. "What happened here?" she asked, trying not to laugh. "I attempted breakfast." He gestured helplessly at the smoking pan. "It seemed simple enough. You run a multi-million-dollar aviation company, but you can't scramble eggs. Apparently my skill set has limitations." He dumped the charred remains into the trash with more force than necessary. "I was trying to—" He stopped, jaw tightening. "Trying to what?" "Nothing. Forget it." He grabbed his briefcase. "I have an early meeting." "Gregory." Courtney caught his arm as he tried to brush past. "What's going on?" He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something cracked in his carefully controlled expression. "I was trying to make you breakfast, because you always make me pancakes, even though they're lumpy and slightly burnt, and I wanted to—" He exhaled sharply. "I wanted to do something nice for you." Courtney's heart melted into a puddle. "You tried to cook me breakfast?" Operative word being tried. He looked almost embarrassed, and it was possibly the most endearing thing she'd ever seen. "I'm apparently only competent in boardrooms." "That's not true." She smiled up at him. "You're also very good at being bossy about mug placement." "It's a gift." They stood there in the kitchen, the morning light filtering through the windows, and Courtney felt the last of her defenses crumble. This man, this supposedly cold, calculating CEO, had tried to make her breakfast. Had burned eggs because he wanted to do something nice for her. "Thank you," she said softly, "for trying. Don't thank me yet. I haven't figured out how to disable the smoke alarm." Right on cue, the alarm shrieked to life. What followed was 10 minutes of chaos. Courtney on a chair trying to reach the alarm, Gregory holding her waist to keep her steady, both of them laughing like idiots, while the alarm screamed and Gerald the Pothos witnessed their madness from his window perch. When the alarm finally stopped, Courtney was still standing on the chair, Gregory's hands firm on her waist, both of them breathless from laughing. "We're disasters," Courtney gasped. "You're a disaster," Gregory corrected. "I'm just collateral damage. You started this by burning eggs." Details. He helped her down from the chair, hands lingering on her waist longer than necessary. Their faces were inches apart, and Courtney could see gold flecks in his blue eyes she'd never noticed before. "Gregory," she whispered. His phone rang, shattering the moment. He cursed under his breath, checking the screen. "I have to take this. Marcus wouldn't call unless—" He answered. "What's wrong?" Courtney watched his expression shift from annoyed to focused to concerned. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said, ending the call. "Problem at the office. Major client threatening to pull their contract." "Go." Courtney stepped back. "Do your CEO thing. I'm sorry about breakfast." "I'll survive," she smiled. "Go save your company." He grabbed his briefcase, then paused at the door. "Dinner tonight? I'll order from that Italian place you like. The one with the breadsticks?" "The one with the excessive breadsticks, yes." "Deal." After he left, Courtney cleaned up the kitchen and tried to ignore the fact that her heart was doing gymnastics over burned eggs and breadstick promises. Her phone rang. "Sloan. You need to come to my office," Sloan said without preamble. "Now." "What's wrong?" "Just come and bring coffee." The good kind. 30 minutes later, Courtney sat in Sloan's pristine law office, clutching an overpriced latte, while her best friend paced like a caged tiger. "You're falling for him," Sloan said. "I'm not. Don't lie to me. I've known you since you thought cargo pants were fashion. You're falling for Gregory O'Connell." Courtney stared into her coffee. "Maybe." "Caught." Sloan sat down, her expression softening. "He blackmailed you into this. You remember that, right?" "I know." "Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're getting in way too deep with a man who threatened to destroy your career. He wouldn't actually—" "You don't know that," Sloan's voice rose. "You met him 3 weeks ago. He could still crush you if this goes south. But it won't—" "You don't know that either." Sloan grabbed Courtney's hands. "I love you. You're my best friend. And I've watched you give your whole heart to people who didn't deserve it before. I don't want to see you hurt again." Courtney's eyes stung. "This is different." "How?" "Because—" She struggled to put it into words. "Because he tried to make me breakfast this morning and nearly burned down the kitchen. Because he carries me to bed when I fall asleep on the couch. Because he looks at me like I'm not just convenient or an arrangement, but like I'm—" She swallowed hard. "Like I matter." Sloane's expression crumbled. "Oh, honey, I'm in trouble, aren't I?" "So much trouble." Sloane pulled her into a hug. "But if he hurts you, I will destroy him with legal paperwork so complex he'll need a PhD to understand it." "That's oddly comforting. That's what friends are for." That evening, Gregory came home looking exhausted. His tie was loosened, his hair disheveled from running his hands through it, and he had that tight expression that meant the day had been brutal. "Client?" Courtney asked from the couch. "Saved. Barely." He collapsed beside her with a groan. "I need to not think about aviation for at least 12 hours. Italian's on its way. Extra breadsticks. You're perfect." The words hung in the air, casual but weighted. Gregory realized what he'd said and tensed, but Courtney just smiled. "I'm really not. I burned toast this morning after you left." "How do you burn toast?" "I got distracted reading a case file and forgot about it." Gregory laughed, the sound genuine and warm. He shifted and suddenly his head was in her lap, his long legs stretched across the couch. Courtney froze. "Is this okay?" he asked, looking up at her. "No. Yes. Maybe." Everything was too much and not enough. "Yeah," she said softly. "This is okay." Her fingers found his hair without conscious thought, threading through the dark strands. Gregory's eyes closed, his whole body relaxing in a way she'd never seen before. "This is nice," he murmured. "Just nice. Perfect, this is perfect." His hand found hers, lacing their fingers together. "Courtney? I need to tell you something." His eyes opened, meeting hers. "About the arrangement. About us." Courtney's heart hammered. "Okay. I don't want—" The doorbell rang. Their food. Gregory sat up, running a hand over his face. "Hold that thought." But the moment was broken, and whatever he'd been about to say remained unspoken through dinner, through a movie neither of them paid attention to, through good night that felt like it carried the weight of all their unfinished conversations. In her room, Courtney lay awake and wondered what Gregory had been about to say. In his room, Gregory stared at the ceiling and cursed his timing. Tomorrow, he promised himself. Tomorrow he'd tell her the truth, that this stopped being pretend weeks ago and he was terrified of what that meant. But tonight, they both lay in separate rooms, wanting the same thing and too afraid to reach for it. Sunday morning brought an unexpected visitor. Courtney was still in her pajamas, the same NYU sweatshirt and shorts that drove Gregory inexplicably crazy, though he'd never admit it, when the doorbell rang. She padded to the door, expecting a package. Instead, she found Eleanor O'Connell on the doorstep, holding a basket of what appeared to be fresh pastries. "Grandma Eleanor," Courtney's voice came out as a squeak. "What are you— I mean, this is— Gregory didn't mention—" "Surprise visits are more fun, dear." Eleanor swept past her into the penthouse, taking in the space with bright, observant eyes. "I brought croissants. Is my grandson home?" "He's in the shower. I can get him." "No need. I came to see you." Eleanor set the basket on the kitchen counter, then turned to study Courtney with an expression that was far sharper than her sweet demeanor suggested. "We should talk." Courtney's heart dropped to her feet. "Talk?" "About Gregory." Eleanor poured herself coffee like she owned the place, which Courtney supposed she kind of did. "He's different lately. Happier. I want to know why." I'm not sure what you mean." "Don't play coy, sweetheart. I may be old, but I'm not blind." Eleanor settled onto a bar stool. "Gregory hasn't smiled this much in years. He talks about you constantly. Courtney thinks this." Courtney said that. "It's nauseating and absolutely delightful." Courtney felt heat flood her face. "He talks about me?" "Incessantly, so tell me." Eleanor's eyes gleamed with something that looked suspiciously like mischief. "Are you in love with my grandson?" The question hit Courtney like a physical blow. It's complicated. Love usually is." "Grandmother." Gregory's voice came from the hallway, sharp with warning. He emerged wearing jeans and a t-shirt, hair still damp from the shower. "What are you doing here?" "Visiting my favorite couple. Is that a crime?" Eleanor's smile was pure innocence. "Courtney was just about to tell me how you two are really doing." Gregory's gaze locked with Courtney's across the kitchen. She saw panic there, matching her own, but also something else. A question, maybe even hope. "We're good," he said carefully. "Really good." "Are you?" Eleanor stood, crossing to her grandson. Even with her diminutive height, she somehow managed to look imposing. "Because I'm getting the distinct impression you're both dancing around something." "We're not—" Gregory started. "Oh, please. I've watched you two for weeks now. The longing looks, the careful distance, the way you touch each other like you're afraid of breaking something precious." She poked Gregory's chest. "Stop being a coward and tell the girl how you feel." Silence crashed through the penthouse like a wave. Courtney stood frozen, heart hammering. Gregory looked like he'd been struck by lightning. Eleanor simply waited, arms crossed, eyebrow raised. "Grandma," Gregory said finally, "this isn't what? The right time? The right place?" Eleanor's expression softened. "Darling boy, there's never a perfect moment. Trust me. I waited 6 months to tell your grandfather I loved him because I was scared. 6 months I'll never get back." Her eyes grew distant. "Don't waste time being afraid. Life's too short, and love is too rare." She patted Gregory's cheek, grabbed a croissant, and headed for the door. "I'll see myself out. You two talk. Actually talk this time." Then she was gone, leaving behind awkward silence and the faint scent of expensive perfume. Courtney stared at the closed door. Gregory stared at Courtney. Gerald the Pothos bore witness to the most uncomfortable moment of both their lives. "So," Courtney said, "that happened. She's meddling. She's perceptive. She's impossible." Gregory ran a hand through his damp hair, making it stick up at angles. "Courtney, I'm sorry, she had no right to put you on the spot like that. She asked if I was in love with you." Gregory went very still. "And what did you say?" "I said it was complicated." Courtney twisted her hands together. "Is it complicated?" "Yes, no, maybe." He crossed the space between them, stopping just close enough for her to feel his warmth. "It started complicated. Blackmail tends to do that. And now I can't remember why I thought forcing you into this was a good idea, because somewhere along the way it stopped being about my grandmother and started being about—" He stopped, jaw tight. "About what?" Courtney whispered. "About wanting you here. Not because of an arrangement, but because I can't imagine this place without your chaos anymore. Without your plants and your terrible cooking and the way you argue with me about everything." His hand came up, cupping her face with devastating gentleness. "You've taken over my life, Courtney O'Neill, and I don't want it back." Courtney's breath caught. "Gregory, I'm not good at this," he continued, thumb brushing her cheekbone. "I'm good at business, at strategy, at keeping people at a distance. But you climbed over every wall I built like they were made of paper, and now I'm standing here terrified because I don't know how to do this without ruining it." "Do what?" "Fall in love with you." The words came out rough, almost angry. "I'm falling in love with you, and it's terrifying, and I don't know how to make it stop." The world tilted. Courtney grabbed his arms for balance, staring up at him with wide eyes. "You're falling in love with me?" "Apparently." He laughed, but it sounded broken. "Terrible timing, I know. You probably hate me for the blackmail thing." "I don't hate you. And this is the worst possible way to tell someone, and I should have planned this better. But grandmother ambushed us, and you're standing there in that ridiculous sweatshirt looking at me like that, and I—" Courtney grabbed his shirt and pulled him down, cutting off his rambling with her lips on his. For a heartbeat, Gregory froze in shock. Then his arms came around her, pulling her close as he kissed her back, with weeks of pent-up longing. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was desperate, hungry, like they'd both been drowning and finally found air. Courtney's hands fisted in his shirt. Gregory's fingers tangled in her hair. They kissed like people who'd been denying themselves for far too long, tasting and exploring and learning each other with an urgency that stole breath and reason. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, Gregory pressed his forehead to hers. "That was about time," Courtney finished. "That was about time." He laughed, the sound pure joy. "I was going to say perfect, but that works too." "Gregory?" "Yeah?" "I'm falling for you too, just so we're clear." She smiled against his lips. "Even though you blackmailed me, and you're bossy about coffee, and you tried to burn down the kitchen making eggs. Those are terrible reasons to fall for someone. I have worse judgment than that. I also like your ridiculous number of coffee beans. 17 isn't ridiculous. It's extremely ridiculous." He kissed her again, softer this time, like a promise. When he pulled back, his smile was the real one, the one that made him look years younger and utterly devastatingly happy. "We should probably call my grandmother," he said. "And tell her what? That she was right? She'll be insufferable. She'll be delighted." Same thing. But Gregory was already reaching for his phone. keeping one arm firmly around Courtney's waist, like he was afraid she might disappear. The phone rang twice before Eleanor answered. "Well? Did you two stop being idiots?" "Yes, grandmother," Gregory said, unable to keep the smile from his voice. "We stopped being idiots. Finally. I was beginning to think I'd have to lock you in a room together." She paused. "You're welcome, by the way." "For what?" "For forcing you to admit what you've both been feeling for weeks. Now kiss that girl again and plan a proper date." "And Gregory?" "Yes? I expect great-grandchildren eventually. But take your time. You've got this part right. Don't rush the rest." The call ended, leaving Gregory and Courtney standing in the kitchen, wrapped in each other's arms, laughing like fools. "Your grandmother is terrifying," Courtney said. "I know. I think I love her." "She definitely loves you." Gregory kissed her forehead, her nose, her lips. "Not as much as I'm going to, though." Courtney's heart soared. "Is that a promise?" "It's a guarantee." And for the first time since this whole mess started, everything felt exactly right. Dating Gregory O'Connell for real was simultaneously the best and most terrifying thing Courtney had ever done. The best part, he was ridiculously romantic when he let his guard down. Flowers appeared on her desk for no reason. He learned to make pancakes, still lumpy but edible. He held her hand while they walked through the city like he was afraid she might float away. The terrifying part, Courtney couldn't shake the guilt gnawing at her insides. "You're thinking too loud again," Gregory said, looking up from his laptop where they sat on the couch, her feet in his lap. "Sorry. What's wrong?" He set the laptop aside, giving her his full attention. "And don't say nothing. I'm learning your tells." Courtney pulled her knees to her chest. "Your grandmother. She thinks this whole thing started organically. She doesn't know about the investigation, the blackmail, any of it." Gregory's expression shuttered. "I know. Doesn't that bother you?" "Every day." He ran a hand over his face. "But what's the alternative? Tell her I blackmailed you into dating me, and somewhere along the way it became real. She'd never forgive me. She'd forgive you, eventually." Courtney reached for his hand. "She loves you. She loves the version of me she thinks exists. The grandson who fell in love naturally, not the one who threatened legal action to get a fake girlfriend." His jaw tightened. "I'm not proud of how this started, Courtney. I know you're not. But I can't regret it either because it brought you into my life." He pulled her close, tucking her against his side. "Does that make me selfish?" "It makes you human." She kissed his jaw. "But we should tell her. Eventually." "Eventually," he agreed, though his tone suggested eventually meant never. 3 days later, Eleanor invited them to Sunday brunch. The dining room was set beautifully, fresh flowers, china that probably cost more than Courtney's car, and enough food to feed a small army. "You're glowing, dear," Eleanor said to Courtney, pouring mimosas. "Gregory must be treating you well." "He is." Courtney smiled at Gregory across the table. "Surprisingly well, actually." "Surprisingly?" Gregory raised an eyebrow. "Should I be offended?" "You tried to make eggs once, the bar was low." Eleanor laughed, delighted. "Oh, I remember Gregory's cooking attempts as a child. He once tried to make me breakfast and nearly burned down the kitchen." "Some things never change," Courtney muttered. The brunch was lovely until Eleanor's expression turned serious. "I want to ask you both something." Courtney's stomach dropped. Gregory went still beside her. "How did you really meet?" Eleanor folded her hands on the table. "And don't give me that coffee shop nonsense. I know my grandson. He doesn't read mystery novels, and he certainly doesn't strike up conversations with strangers." Silence crashed through the room. "Grandmother," Gregory started. "The truth, please." Eleanor's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm old, not stupid. Something about your story never sat right with me." Courtney looked at Gregory, panic rising. He looked back, and she saw her own fear reflected in his eyes. They'd talked about this, but talking and doing were very different things. "We met through unusual circumstances," Gregory said carefully. "How unusual?" "Very." Eleanor waited, eyebrow raised in an expression Courtney had seen Gregory make 100 times. "I hired her," Gregory finally said, "professionally, to help with a project." It wasn't technically a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. Courtney felt sick. "What kind of project?" Eleanor pressed. "Does it matter?" Gregory's tone sharpened. "We're together now, we're happy. The beginning doesn't change that." "The beginning always matters, darling." Eleanor studied them both with those sharp, knowing eyes. But if you're not ready to tell me, I won't push yet. The conversation moved on, but the damage was done. Courtney could barely eat, pushing food around her plate, while guilt churned in her stomach. In the car ride home, neither spoke until Gregory pulled into the parking garage. "That was close," he said quietly. "Too close." Courtney unbuckled her seatbelt. "Gregory, we need to tell her." "Not yet." "When?" "When she figures it out herself and feels even more betrayed." "I'll handle it." "When?" Courtney pressed. "I don't know." His voice rose, frustration bleeding through. "I don't have a perfect answer, Courtney. I'm trying to protect her." "You're trying to protect yourself." The words hung between them, sharp and true. Gregory's jaw clenched. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Courtney's eyes stung. "I love you. I do. But we built this relationship on a lie, and every day we don't tell her makes it worse. So what do you want me to do? Confess everything and watch her look at me like I'm a stranger? I want you to trust that she loves you enough to forgive you." They stood in the parking garage, voices echoing off concrete, the first real fight of their relationship unfolding in the worst possible place. Gregory deflated, shoulders sagging. "I'm scared," he admitted quietly. "She's all I have left of my family. If I lose her..." "You won't lose her." Courtney stepped closer, taking his hands. "She's stronger than you think, and she loves you more than you know. You don't know that." "I do, because I see how she looks at you, the same way I do." Gregory pulled her into his arms, holding tight. "I'll tell her. Soon. I promise." "Okay." Courtney breathed in his scent, trying to ignore the dread pooling in her stomach. Soon. But soon felt like a lie too, and they both knew it. That night, Eleanor sat in her study, replaying the brunch conversation. Something was wrong. She'd felt it for weeks, a tension beneath their happiness, a secret neither would share. She picked up her phone, scrolling to a number she rarely called. A private investigator who'd helped her late husband with business matters years ago. Then she set the phone down, guilt washing over her. "No," she told herself, "I won't spy on my grandson." But the question remained, burning in her mind. What were they hiding? And more importantly, when would they trust her enough to tell the truth? The dinner invitation came on a Thursday. Eleanor wanted them over Saturday night. "Just a quiet evening," she'd said. "Nothing fancy." Courtney spent the entire day with a knot in her stomach that no amount of deep breathing could untangle. "You're nervous," Gregory observed as they drove to Eleanor's house. "Perceptive. She's not going to interrogate us again." "You don't know that." Courtney twisted her hands in her lap. "She knows something's off, Gregory. She's too smart not to." "Then we'll handle it. Together." He squeezed her hand, and Courtney tried to draw strength from his certainty. Dinner was perfect. Eleanor had made roast chicken with all the trimmings, and the conversation flowed easily. Too easily. Courtney couldn't shake the feeling they were walking into a trap. After dessert, Eleanor excused herself to take a phone call in her study. Gregory and Courtney cleared dishes, falling into the comfortable rhythm they'd developed over weeks of cohabitation. "That wasn't so bad," Gregory said, loading the dishwasher. "It was suspiciously not bad." Courtney handed him a plate. "I don't trust it." "You're paranoid." "I'm cautious. There's a difference." Gregory smiled, pulling her close for a quick kiss. "Stop worrying. Everything's fine." But everything wasn't fine. In the hallway just outside the kitchen, Eleanor stood frozen, her phone call forgotten. She'd been coming back to ask about coffee when she'd heard voices. "Still feel guilty about how this started," Courtney was saying. "I know. So do I." Gregory's voice was low, but the arrangement was necessary at the time. The arrangement was blackmail. Eleanor's breath caught. "Semantics," Gregory said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "Besides, you agreed." "Because you threatened to destroy my business. What choice did I have?" "Fair point." A pause. "But you have to admit, hiring you to investigate me was actually genius. We never would have met otherwise. Your grandmother hiring me was genius. You blackmailing me into being your fake girlfriend was insane." Eleanor gripped the doorframe, the world tilting beneath her feet. "It stopped being fake pretty quickly," Gregory said softly. "That's not the point. The point is, we lied to her. We're still lying to her. Every dinner, every conversation, it's all built on a lie. We'll tell her when the time is right." "When will that be, Gregory? When she's on her deathbed?" Eleanor couldn't listen anymore. She stepped back, her designer heels clicking on the hardwood floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot. In the kitchen, Gregory and Courtney froze. "Did you hear that?" Courtney whispered. They rushed into the hallway to find Eleanor standing there, face pale, eyes bright with tears she was too proud to shed. "Grandma," Gregory started. "Don't." Her voice shook. "Don't you dare. Please, let me explain." "Explain what?" "That I hired a private investigator to check on you and you discovered it, and blackmailed her into pretending to date you?" Eleanor's voice rose, years of composure cracking. "That every dinner, every smile, every word about how happy you were, it was all a performance?" "No." Courtney stepped forward. "It wasn't all you." Eleanor turned to her, and the betrayal in her eyes was devastating. "I trusted you. I welcomed you into my home, into my family, and you were just doing a job. It's not like that anymore." Courtney's eyes filled with tears. "I love him. Really love him. This is real now. Is it? Or is that just what you need me to believe?" Eleanor wrapped her arms around herself. "I don't even know what's true anymore." "Grandmother, please." Gregory's voice cracked. "Yes, it started as an arrangement. But Courtney and I, what we have now is real. I swear to you. Your swearing means nothing." Eleanor's composure shattered completely. "You lied to me. Both of you. You manipulated me. Let me believe my prayers had been answered, that my grandson had finally found love. Do you have any idea how happy that made me? How relieved?" "I know," Gregory said quietly. "That's why I couldn't tell you. I couldn't bear to disappoint you." "Well, congratulations. You've succeeded spectacularly." Eleanor wiped her eyes with trembling hands. "I want you both to leave." "Grandma, leave." The word came out as a sob. I need you to go. Please." Courtney grabbed Gregory's hand, pulling him toward the door before he could make it worse. They left Eleanor standing in her hallway, surrounded by the remains of a perfect dinner and a shattered trust. In the car, neither spoke. Gregory's hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white. Courtney cried silently, watching the city blur past through tear-filled eyes. "I told you," she finally whispered. "I told you we should have been honest." "I know." His voice was hollow. "I know." Back at the penthouse, they sat on opposite ends of the couch, the space between them feeling vast. "She'll forgive us," Courtney said, though she didn't believe it. "Eventually. You don't know that. She loves you. She loved who she thought I was." Gregory stood abruptly, pacing. The grandson who fell in love naturally, not the manipulative bastard who blackmailed his way into a relationship. "It's not like that, isn't it?" He turned to face her. "Be honest, Courtney. If I hadn't threatened you, would you have ever looked at me twice?" The question hung in the air, cruel and impossible to answer. "That's not fair," Courtney whispered. "None of this is fair." Gregory ran his hands through his hair. "I've ruined everything. My relationship with my grandmother, your trust, all of it. You haven't ruined us, haven't I?" He looked at her with eyes full of pain. "How do we move forward from this? How do we build something real when the foundation is poisoned?" Courtney stood, crossing to him. "We already built something real. What we feel, that's real. Everything else is just messy history." Gregory pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "I'm sorry for all of it." "I know." She held him tight. "We'll fix this. Together." But neither of them knew how. Eleanor didn't answer her phone for 3 days. Courtney watched Gregory deteriorate in slow motion. He barely ate, worked from home with the curtains drawn, and stared at his phone like he could will it to ring through sheer desperation. "You need to eat something," Courtney said on day 4, setting a sandwich in front of him. "I'm not hungry." "Gregory!" "I said I'm not hungry." His voice cracked, and immediately his expression crumpled. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to snap." Courtney circled his chair, wrapping her arms around his shoulders from behind. "I know." He leaned back into her embrace, eyes closed. "What if she never forgives me?" "She will." "You don't know that. I know she loves you. That's enough." Courtney pressed a kiss to his temple. "We just have to give her time." "How much time?" "However long it takes." That afternoon, Sloane showed up unannounced with Thai food and wine. "Intervention time," she announced, setting bags on the counter. "I heard what happened from Courtney. Where's the brooding billionaire?" "Home office," Courtney said. "He hasn't come out in hours." "Perfect. You and I are going to eat pad Thai and discuss how to fix this mess." They sat on the couch, and Courtney picked at her food while Sloane watched with concerned eyes. "You really love him," Sloane said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah, I really do. Even though he blackmailed you? He's not the same person who did that." Courtney set down her fork. "He's changed. Or maybe he was never really that person. Maybe he was just scared and stupid." "Men often are," Sloane said dryly. "But Court, what's your plan here? You can't just wait for Eleanor to come around. What else can we do?" "Show her." Sloane leaned forward. "Not with words. She doesn't trust those anymore. Show her with actions that what you have is real." "How?" "I don't know yet. But you're creative. Figure it out." After Sloane left, Courtney found Gregory still at his desk, staring blankly at his laptop screen. "Come with me," she said. "Where?" "Does it matter?" She held out her hand. "Trust me." He looked at her hand for a long moment, then took it. Courtney led him to the roof of the building, a space Gregory had mentioned once but never used. It was beautiful up here. Potted trees, string lights, a view of the entire city spread out like diamonds on black velvet. "I didn't know you could access this," Gregory said. "I charmed the doorman. James is a romantic." Courtney pulled Gregory to sit beside her on a bench. "Look, I know you're spiraling, but hiding won't fix this." "I'm not hiding. You literally haven't left the penthouse in 4 days." Gregory was quiet for a moment. "I don't know how to fix this, Courtney. I've run companies, negotiated billion-dollar deals, but I have no idea how to make my grandmother forgive me." "Then we figure it out together." Courtney laced their fingers together. "That's what people who love each other do, right? We figure things out together, even when one of them royally screwed everything up. Especially then." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Gregory, you made a mistake, a big one, but you're not defined by how this started. You're defined by what you do next." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You were just too busy being broody and handsome to notice." That pulled a small laugh from him, the first she'd heard in days. "Handsome? Annoyingly so. It's a real problem. I'll try to be less attractive." "Please don't. I have a reputation to maintain." She tilted her face up to look at him. "We're going to get through this." "Promise?" "Promise." They sat on the roof until the city lights blurred and the temperature dropped, holding onto each other like lifelines. The next morning, Courtney woke to find Gregory's side of the bed empty. She'd started sleeping in his room after the disaster dinner, neither of them able to bear the distance of separate rooms. She found him in the kitchen, actually cooking. "Are you making breakfast?" she asked, amazed. "Attempting to." He gestured at a pan of almost not burned eggs. "I watched 3 YouTube videos. I'm impressed." "Don't be. I burned the first 2 batches." They ate together at the counter, and Courtney noticed Gregory seemed lighter somehow, more present. "I've been thinking," he said, setting down his fork, "about what you said, about showing her, not telling her." "And?" "I have an idea, but I'll need your help." "Anything." Gregory took a deep breath. "My grandmother's charity, the one for aviation scholarships. She's been struggling to find sponsors for this year's gala. Okay? What if we organized it? Completely. Took it off her hands. Showed her that we're serious about being partners, about being there for the things that matter to her." Courtney's eyes widened. "That's brilliant. It's a lot of work, and she might refuse our help entirely. Or," Courtney said slowly, "she might see it as the olive branch it is." They spent the rest of the day planning. Gregory made calls to potential sponsors, while Courtney researched venues. By evening, they had the bones of a plan. "We should tell her tomorrow," Gregory said. "In person. Are you ready for that?" He looked at Courtney, really looked at her, and something settled in his expression. "With you? Yes." That night, as they lay in bed, Gregory pulled Courtney close. "Thank you," he whispered into the darkness. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. On us." Courtney turned in his arms, finding his lips in the dark. The kiss was soft, tender, full of promises neither of them had words for yet. "I'm not going anywhere," she said against his mouth. "You're stuck with me, O'Connell, blackmail and all." He laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest into hers. "Best worst decision I ever made." "Absolutely the worst," she agreed, kissing him again. "And absolutely the best." Tomorrow they'd face Eleanor. Tomorrow they'd try to rebuild what they'd broken. But tonight, wrapped in each other's arms, they had everything they needed. each other. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Standing on Eleanor's doorstep felt different this time. Before, Courtney had been nervous about maintaining a lie. Now she was terrified of facing the truth. She might slam the door in our faces, Gregory said quietly. Then we'll try again tomorrow. And the day after that? And the day after that, Courtney confirmed, squeezing his hand. However long it takes. Gregory knocked before he could lose his nerve. The door opened to reveal not Eleanor, but a man in his 60s wearing an apron covered in flour. He looked vaguely familiar. Courtney had seen him at the first dinner, hovering discreetly in the background. "Mr. O'Connell," the man said, his tone carefully neutral. "Mrs. O'Connell wasn't expecting you." "I know, Thomas, but we need to see her, please." Thomas studied them both, then sighed. "Wait here." He disappeared into the house, leaving them on the doorstep like strangers. Gregory's jaw was tight, his hand crushing Courtney's. "Breathe," she whispered. "I'm breathing. You're turning purple." He exhaled shakily. This was a terrible idea. This was a brilliant idea. We're showing her we care about what matters to her. What if she doesn't want to see us? Then we'll leave the proposal with Thomas and try again tomorrow. But Thomas returned, gesturing them inside. "She'll see you. 10 minutes. In the study." Eleanor's study was exactly like her. Elegant, organized, with touches of warmth in unexpected places. She sat behind a mahogany desk that had probably belonged to her late husband, her posture perfect, her expression unreadable. "Grandmother," Gregory started. "You have 9.5 minutes, Eleanor said coolly. "I suggest you use them wisely." Courtney placed a folder on the desk. "We have a proposal. For your charity gala." Eleanor's eyebrow arched. "My charity gala. We know you've been struggling to find sponsors this year," Gregory said, "and we know the deadline for the venue deposit is next week." "How do you know that?" "I still have friends on your board." He leaned forward. "Let us help. Let us organize the entire event. Find sponsors, book the venue, handle all the logistics." "Why would I let you do that?" "Because we want to prove to you that we're serious," Courtney said. "Not just about each other, but about being part of your life. About being there for the things that matter to you." Eleanor's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "Words are easy, which is why we're offering action." Gregory opened the folder. "We've already contacted 12 potential sponsors. 8 have verbally committed. We have 3 venues holding dates for you to choose from, and we've outlined a complete event timeline." Eleanor pulled the folder closer, scanning the contents. The silence stretched, broken only by the ticking of an antique clock. "This is thorough," she finally said. "We spent 2 days on it," Courtney offered. "Well, Gregory did most of the sponsor calls because he's terrifying, and people say yes to him. I did the creative planning because apparently I'm good at color schemes." Despite herself, Eleanor's lips twitched. "You are good at color schemes. The penthouse hasn't looked that alive in years." Hope bloomed in Courtney's chest. "So you'll consider it?" "I'll consider it." Eleanor set down the folder. "But this doesn't fix what you did." "I know," Gregory said quietly. "Nothing can fix that except time and proving to you every day that what Courtney and I have is real." "Is it?" Eleanor looked between them. "Or is this just another performance?" "It's real," Courtney said firmly. "I love your grandson. Not because he blackmailed me into it, but in spite of how this started. I love that he burns eggs trying to make me breakfast. I love that he's bossy about coffee and protective of the people he cares about. I love that he tried to keep up this charade because he was terrified of disappointing you. He succeeded in disappointing me anyway. I know, and he'll spend the rest of his life making up for it if you let him." Eleanor studied Courtney's face for a long moment. "You really do love him. More than anything. Even though he's impossible and stubborn and has terrible timing. Especially because of those things," Courtney smiled. "They make him perfect. For me, anyway." Eleanor turned to Gregory. "And you? What do you have to say for yourself?" Gregory stood, moving around the desk to kneel beside his grandmother's chair. Something Courtney had never seen him do, this proud man humbling himself completely. "I'm sorry," he said, voice rough with emotion. "I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry I manipulated the situation. I'm sorry I took your trust and broke it because I was too much of a coward, to be honest." He took Eleanor's hands in his. "But I'm not sorry I met Courtney. I'm not sorry I fell in love with her. And I'll spend every day proving to you that this, us, is the most real thing in my life. A tear slid down Eleanor's cheek. You were always so afraid of emotions, even as a child. I learned from the best, Gregory said with a small smile. You taught me to be strong, to never show weakness. I just took it too far. I never meant, Eleanor's voice broke. I never wanted you to be alone. I'm not alone anymore. He glanced back at Courtney. I have her, but I need you too, Grandma. Please. The formal grandmother had shifted to Grandma, and the vulnerability in Gregory's voice finally shattered Eleanor's composure. She pulled him into a fierce hug, and Courtney had to look away, her own eyes burning. You're both idiots, Eleanor said, her voice muffled against Gregory's shoulder. Absolute idiots. We know, Gregory said, but you're my idiots. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. And if you ever lie to me again, I will disown you both. Never again, Courtney promised. Good. Eleanor stood, smoothing her dress with shaky hands. Now, about this gala. I assume you have a budget proposal? Gregory laughed, really laughed, and the sound was pure relief. Tab 3. Of course it is. You always were thorough. Eleanor picked up the folder. Thomas, set 3 places for lunch. These idiots are staying. Over lunch, which Thomas served with knowing smiles, they discussed the gala. Eleanor critiqued their sponsor list, improved their timeline, and added personal touches they hadn't thought of. You're a natural at this, Eleanor told Courtney. Have you ever considered event planning? I'm a private investigator. Yes, the career that brought you into my grandson's life through morally questionable means. Eleanor's smile was sharp but warm. Consider branching out. As they were leaving, Eleanor pulled Courtney aside while Gregory retrieved their coats. Thank you, Eleanor said quietly. For what? For not giving up on him. For seeing past the walls he builds and loving him anyway. She squeezed Courtney's hand. He needs that. Someone who won't let him hide. I love him, Courtney said simply. Even when he's impossible. Especially when he's impossible. Eleanor's eyes twinkled. That's when he needs love most. In the car, Gregory was quiet, one hand on the wheel, the other holding Courtney's. That went better than expected, Courtney said. She called us idiots. Affectionately. Still idiots. But he was smiling. Really smiling. Thank you. For the idea. For coming with me. For everything. That's what partners do. Gregory lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Partners. I like the sound of that. Good. Because you're stuck with me, remember? Best imprisonment ever, he murmured, and Courtney's heart soared. They'd cleared the biggest hurdle. They'd earned back Eleanor's trust. Now they just had to figure out how to be together, really together, without the weight of lies between them. And Courtney couldn't wait. The charity gala was a stunning success. Eleanor beamed all night, watching Gregory and Courtney work together seamlessly. Her directing guests with warmth, him handling logistics with quiet efficiency. You two make quite the team, Victoria said, appearing at Courtney's elbow near the end of the evening. Courtney tensed. Victoria, I didn't know you were here. Surprise donation. For a good cause. Victoria's smile was genuine this time, without its usual edge. I wanted to apologize, actually, for the awkwardness at the last gala. I didn't realize how serious you two were. We're very serious. I can see that. Victoria glanced across the room where Gregory was laughing at something Eleanor said. I've never seen him like this. Happy, unguarded. She looked back at Courtney. Whatever you did to crack that ice fortress, well done. I didn't do anything, I just loved him. Sometimes that's everything. Victoria extended her hand. No hard feelings? Courtney shook it. None. Thank you for the donation. Thank you for making him human. Victoria smiled and disappeared into the crowd. When the last guest had left and Eleanor had hugged them both good night with misty eyes, Gregory and Courtney finally returned to the penthouse. Courtney kicked off her heels with a groan. My feet are screaming. Come here. Gregory sat on the couch patting his lap. What are you doing? Foot massage. You've been in those torture devices for 6 hours. Courtney settled onto the couch, placing her feet in his lap. His hands were warm and strong, working out the aches with surprising gentleness. Where did you learn to do this? She asked, melting into the cushions. YouTube. After the egg incident, I figured I should expand my skill set. You watched YouTube videos on foot massages? And several other things. His hands moved higher, kneading her calf muscles. I'm a dedicated student when properly motivated. The touch shifted from therapeutic to something else entirely. Gregory's eyes met hers, dark with intent. Gregory, Courtney whispered. Tell me to stop, he said quietly, his hands stilling on her legs. Don't stop. He moved with deliberate slowness, pulling her onto his lap so she straddled him. His hands cupped her face, thumbs tracing her cheekbones. I love you, he said, each word weighted with meaning. Not because of an arrangement, not because my grandmother wanted it. Because you're you. Because you make me laugh and challenge me and see me. Really see me. I love you too. Courtney's fingers threaded through his hair. Even though you're bossy and impossible and tried to blackmail me. Especially because of those things? He echoed her earlier words, smiling. Especially because of those things. He kissed her then, slow and deep, like they had all the time in the world. His hands slid down her back, pulling her closer, until no space existed between them. Courtney's dress was suddenly too restrictive, the air too warm, her skin too sensitive. Bedroom? Gregory murmured against her lips. Please. He carried her. She didn't even bother protesting about her height this time, and laid her on his bed with reverent care. Are you sure? He asked, hovering over her, his weight supported on his forearms. I've never been more sure of anything. What followed was tender and intense, passion tempered with profound emotion. Gregory worshipped every inch of her skin with his hands and mouth, murmuring words of love and devotion that made her eyes sting. When they finally came together, it felt like coming home. Two pieces that had been searching and had finally found their perfect fit. Beautiful, Gregory whispered, pressing kisses along her collarbone. So beautiful. I'm really not, Courtney gasped. You really are. He kissed her deeply. Every single part of you. Afterwards they lay tangled together, sweat-slicked and breathless. Gregory pulled her close, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. I should have done that weeks ago, he murmured. The timing wasn't right. It's right now? Perfect now. Courtney pressed a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. Gregory. I'm glad you blackmailed me. He laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest into hers. That's the strangest thing to be grateful for. It brought me here, to you, to this. She propped herself up to look at him. So yeah, I'm glad. Gregory rolled her onto her back, settling between her thighs with a wicked smile. Then let me give you more reasons to be grateful. That was terrible. But effective? He kissed her neck. Extremely effective, she admitted, arching into him. They made love again, slower this time, savoring every touch and kiss. And when they finally fell asleep, wrapped in each other's arms, both felt the same truth settling deep in their bones. This was forever. No more pretending, no more lies. Just love, messy and complicated and absolutely perfect. In the morning, Courtney woke to find Gregory watching her sleep. Creepy, she mumbled. Beautiful, he corrected, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I have a question. If it's about my height again, the answer is still 5'5". It's 5'2" and that's not my question. He took a deep breath. How do you feel about forever? Courtney's heart stopped. Forever? With me? Here, this. He gestured between them. All of it. Are you asking what I think you're asking? Not yet, but soon. He kissed her softly. I just need to know if you'd say yes. Tears filled Courtney's eyes. You ridiculous, impossible man. Is that a yes? That's a ask me properly and find out. Gregory grinned, that real smile that transformed his entire face. Challenge accepted. And Courtney knew, with absolute certainty, that whatever came next would be the greatest adventure of her life. Starting with the proposal she knew was coming, and maybe someday soon the family they'd build together. But for now, wrapped in each other's arms as morning light filtered through the windows, they had everything they needed. Each other. And love that had started wrong but ended up so perfectly right. 2 months after the gala, Gregory took Courtney back to the roof, where they'd talked about fixing things with Eleanor. Why are we up here? Courtney asked, though the space had been transformed. Candles everywhere, rose petals scattered across the floor, string lights twinkling like stars. Because this is where you told me we'd figure things out together. Gregory turned to face her, and Courtney's breath caught at the emotion in his eyes. This is where you promised you weren't going anywhere. Gregory, let me finish. He took her hands, and she realized they were trembling. You crashed into my life. Literally, you were hiding behind a pillar and turned everything upside down. You brought chaos and color and laughter into a space that had been dark for so long, I'd forgotten what light looked like. Tears already streamed down Courtney's face. You challenge me, you make me laugh at myself. You love me despite all my flaws, all my mistakes. He dropped to one knee, pulling a velvet box from his pocket. Courtney O'Neill, will you marry me? Will you continue being my chaos, my home, my everything? The ring was delicate and vintage. Eleanor's, Courtney realized through her tears. Your grandmother's ring? She whispered. She insisted. Said it should go to the woman who finally made me human. He smiled up at her. So, will you marry this impossible, bossy man who once blackmailed you? You forgot arrogant. And arrogant, yes. And terrible at cooking eggs. Courtney. His voice held laughter and exasperation and love. Is that a yes? That's a yes, you ridiculous man. Obviously yes. Gregory slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her so thoroughly they both forgot where they were until someone cleared their throat loudly. Eleanor stood by the roof access door, grinning like she'd won the lottery. Finally, I thought you'd never ask. Were you spying? Gregory demanded. Absolutely. Thomas has it all on video. She pulled Courtney into a hug. Welcome to the family officially. You knew he was proposing tonight? Darling, whose ring do you think that is? Eleanor laughed. Now we have 6 months to plan a wedding. I'm thinking spring. Actually, Gregory interrupted, we were thinking something smaller, more intimate. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. How small? Very small. Like immediate family and close friends, small. Gregory Michael O'Connell, you will not deprive me of throwing you a proper wedding. 3 months, Courtney negotiated. Small ceremony, but you can plan it however you want. Eleanor considered this. Deal, but I'm inviting at least 50 people. 20, Gregory countered. 40, 30, and that's final. Done. Eleanor clapped her hands together. I'll call the planner tomorrow. Oh, this is exciting. The wedding was perfect. Intimate but elegant, held in Eleanor's garden with exactly 32 guests. Eleanor had snuck in 2 extra. Sloane served as maid of honor, crying through the entire ceremony despite claiming she never cried at weddings. You may kiss your bride, the officiant said. Gregory pulled Courtney close, dipping her dramatically. Finally, he murmured against her lips. You're stuck with me forever now. Absolutely terrible decision, she agreed, kissing him back. 6 months into their marriage, Courtney woke feeling nauseous. Then it happened again, and again. The pregnancy test confirmed what she already suspected. She told Gregory that night, unable to wait. He'd just come home from work, loosening his tie, when she thrust the test at him. What's this? Then his eyes widened. Are you... Pregnant. I'm pregnant. Gregory stared at the test, then at her, then back at the test. Then he laughed, pure, unrestrained joy, and lifted her in his arms, spinning her around the kitchen. You're going to be a father, Courtney said, laughing and crying simultaneously. We're going to be parents. He set her down carefully like she was made of glass. I'm going to be a dad. A very bossy dad, who'll probably color-code the baby's clothes. Absolutely. He kissed her, one hand already settling protectively on her still flat stomach. I love you so much. Telling Eleanor was pure comedy. She took one look at their faces, screamed, and promptly burst into tears. I knew it, she sobbed. I knew you two would give me great-grandchildren. Just one for now, Courtney laughed. For now implies more later. I approve. As Courtney's pregnancy progressed, Gregory became impossibly protective and ridiculously sweet. He read every baby book, prepared the nursery months early, and talked to her growing belly every night. You're being absurd, Courtney said at 7 months, watching him organize tiny baby socks by color. I'm being prepared. You're being neurotic. Same thing. He looked at her rounded belly with wonder. How are my girls today? They're fine. And we don't know it's a girl. It's a girl. I can feel it. He kissed her stomach. Hey there, little one. Your mom is still insisting she's 5'5", which is adorable. I hate you. Courtney said, though she was smiling. You love me. Unfortunately. 8 months pregnant, Courtney waddled into the living room to find Gregory setting up a camera. What are you doing? Documenting this moment. You're glowing. I'm enormous. You're beautiful, and still only 5'2". She threw a pillow at him. He caught it, laughing. Come here, he said, pulling her gently onto his lap, a feat that required coordination given her belly. I love you. I love our family. I love that terrible investigator job that brought you into my life. I love you too. She kissed him softly. Even though you blackmailed me. Best worst decision ever? Absolutely the best worst decision. She smiled against his lips. Now help me up. Your daughter is sitting on my bladder. I knew it was a girl. 3 weeks later, they welcomed a daughter, tiny and perfect, with Courtney's red hair and Gregory's blue eyes. Eleanor cried for an hour straight, holding her great-granddaughter with trembling hands. What's her name? She asked. Gregory looked at Courtney. They'd debated this for months. Eleanor Rose, Courtney said, after her great-grandmother who orchestrated the greatest love story by hiring the world's worst private investigator. Eleanor's tears started fresh. You're both still idiots, she said, cradling the baby. But you're my idiots, and this little one is perfect. That night, with their daughter sleeping in her bassinet and Courtney exhausted but radiant in the hospital bed, Gregory held his wife's hand. I love you, he said simply. I love you too. All 5'2" of me. 5'2" of absolute perfection. That's the sleep deprivation talking. That's the truth talking. He kissed her forehead. Thank you, for everything. For being terrible at surveillance. For agreeing to my insane blackmail scheme. For loving me anyway. Thank you for being impossible and bossy and perfect. She squeezed his hand. Now go get some sleep. Baby Rose will be awake in 2 hours demanding food. But neither of them slept. They sat together, watching their daughter sleep, marveling at the life they'd built. From blackmail to love, from lies to truth, from arrangement to forever. The investigation had led to chantage. The farsa had led to the most real love of their lives. And neither of them would change a single thing. Leave your comment and share this story with someone special. It truly helps us keep bringing new stories to you. And if you want to follow every chapter of this emotional journey, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Your support makes all the difference.